Hello, my name is Kate Delaney and I'm a mindfulness coach. I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about mindfulness, what it actually is. We hear about it so often, that sense of everything is mindful now, but what really is that? And even more, I hope to talk to you today about the present moment, the here and now, this actual moment that we have here, this moment that you're sitting here watching this, and this moment that I'm talking to you. So what exactly is mindfulness? I'm asked that all the time. Essentially, mindfulness is about bringing our attention back to this actual moment. This moment right now is the only thing that's actually real. We spend so much of our time ahead in the future. Our mind catastrophizes. We look ahead, we come up with all these dramatic scenarios often, or our mind takes us back to the past and it goes over things, perhaps reminisces over things that were good, and also often feels regret and sadness. So mindfulness is about guiding our attention, about building that awareness within ourselves of what is actually here. Sometimes in our lives we get lost. There are many distractions in our lives that really get in the way of that. The first thing I always say to my clients when I'm discussing mindfulness with them is I ask them, do you think you are your mind, or do you think you have a mind? So if you were to say to me, I've got a lot on my mind today, who would be talking? Or if you said to me, my mind is busy today, who would be talking? And the way I see this, in a crude sense, is that this is you, and this is your mind. And your mind is this fantastic tool, this wonderful resource. It's also at times incredibly unhelpful, as we saw from the film. There are times when the mind leads us to places that perhaps are very dark. And it is important to reconnect with our true self, who we really are, and recognize that the mind, it's not the enemy. It's a bit like a misguided friend. It's trying to help us. So, for example, sometimes we say the mind is a little bit like a computer. I think of it sometimes like a random thought generator. That the thoughts that the mind comes up with are based on the things that you have seen and experienced in your life. Essentially, the mind delivers thoughts. It comes up with thoughts that it thinks are useful and helpful to us in the moment. And sometimes they are, but more often than not, they are not. It's all about actually recognizing that you have a mind, but you are not your mind. It's a fundamental concept in mindfulness. But more important, I just think it's a fundamental concept in life. We are separate from that actually we then get to make a choice. If the mind comes up with a thought, we then get to decide what to do with it. If your mind said to you right now, I'm guessing you wouldn't listen. However, it's our so often when the mind comes up with thoughts, we give them attention, we listen to them, and at times they're just nonsense. So for example, that thought about running down the street, most people, maybe not all, but most people would ignore that and think that was ridiculous. So it's only the extremes when we actually learn to go, oh well, actually I'm not my mind, of course I have a choice. But so often we get enticed into the stories that the mind tells. So I sometimes say that the mind is a little bit like going for a walk with a dog on a lead. That dog, if you let that dog take control and lead you wherever it wants to go, it tends to go wrong pretty quickly. That dog will, you'll be flying over a road, you'll be chasing after cats, or who knows. But it generally is the idea that as a dog owner or someone walking a dog, you are in control. You guide them in the right direction, and they will want to go here, there, and everywhere. The mind tends to do one of two things. In cases of anxiety, which I would say that most of us can relate to, particularly after the pandemic, the mind often will go ahead into the future and it will say, what if? It's one of its favorite places. It's trying to protect us. It's trying to come up with scenarios to enable us to prepare for catastrophes in the future. The reality is that's quite a dramatic place. It also doesn't help us. So when the mind goes ahead into the future and says what ifs, we tend to feel anxious. We start to worry about those negative dramas. The mind does not know the future. The only information that the mind has to go on is our past, our history. So if things have been difficult in the past, the mind will predict a negative future, but the past is not a guide to the future. And in fact, if we all knew what the future held, we'd all be fortune tellers. So, and lottery winners for that matter. So it's about guiding the attention back from those future catastrophes back to the here and now. But at the same time, it's about noticing that the mind may also go back into the past. And many with depression, periods of darkness, may notice that the mind goes back over things that have happened previously. And often its favourite expression in the past is if only. If only that hadn't happened, that sense of regret. Sometimes, things were better in the past. But regardless, it is not real. It is a negative daydream that the mind generates. And what it's doing is taking you away from right now, from this actual moment. And this moment here, although it is not a natural place to sit and be, it seems to be the most resourceful place. So in this moment, we gain access to our true self. In this moment, there is no drama. There is just what's here right now. Now, that's not to say the present moment is always okay. I work with end of life, and there are many situations, clients I work with, where actually the here and now isn't okay. That's how it is. But there is a sense of isness. It is what it is. I am where I am. And within even the most difficult circumstances, there can be peace. So it's about actually recognizing that right here, right now, the present moment is our most resourceful place. There's a beauty in the here and now that sometimes we miss. So about knowing that actually when the mind wants to lead you like that dog off into the future, off into the past, can you just guide it back? And that ability to guide it back takes practice. So if you haven't practiced mindfulness much before, what I call the mindfulness muscle, that ability to guide our attention back to what's actually here, what's real, this moment, maybe quite weak, as if you haven't done much training, like it really is quite hard to catch it. And often people say, I've been following my mind all over the place, for ages. And many of the people I see that suffer the most are entirely lost in their mind, in the stories their mind generates. And those stories are stopping them from noticing what is actually here, what is actually here in this moment, their physical experience of the here and now, the things around them, their resources. Because when we are fully present, we gain access to our resources, our insight, our wisdom. A good example of this, I often say, is people when they're trying to remember a name and they're really thinking, and they just they're in that conscious mind and they're trying desperately to come up with that name, and then they give up and they go back to the here and now, and that name will pop into their head. And it's that insight that sometimes we forget. It's that access to our more powerful, our unconscious mind that is there waiting for us. Another story we often tell is about a mathematician trying to solve this complex equation, and stewing over it, going over the numbers for days and days and days, and then eventually gives up, and this number just pops into his head. And again, it's that insight that is here in the here and now. But sometimes we need to actually experience it. We need to let go of that attachment to the what ifs or to the if onlys. So with the what ifs, it can be so enticing that if you think about those what if scenarios, those things in the future, that you may fix it, that you may make the future okay. The reality is it doesn't work like that. And actually the people I know that suffer the most are the people that spend the most time with their head in those what ifs, in those scenarios, trying to plan for everything. And actually when they come back, using again that mindfulness muscle, strengthening that muscle and really coming back to the present moment, then there is peace, then there is calm, and then there is a window of opportunity for insight and wisdom, and for you to connect with your true self, the real you, that actually has all the resources you need. In terms of strengthening that mindfulness muscle, well, what can we do? Well, in an ideal world, we'd sit and meditate for an hour a day. It would be a wonderful practice. However, I don't know many people that are actually able to find that time, particularly in our busy lives. So it's actually about just finding a moment, just like right now, to just come back to what is actually here. So I wonder if we could just do that in this moment right now. So right now, I wonder if you could just stop whatever it is you're doing and just allow your attention to come back from the past or from the future to just right here, right now. Maybe you notice the sensation of your body, perhaps it's on a chair, on a bed, and just noticing what that feels like. Maybe noticing the sensation of the air as it lightly touches your skin. And maybe also just noticing your breath. So right now, that life force within us, we don't need to control it. It's been happening since the day you were born. But just let that bring your attention back into the now, to this new moment. The now isn't even the moment we started this. It's right here. And just noticing how it feels, just to pause, just to come back from all of those wanderings of the mind. Maybe noticing that silence from which all sounds emerge. Maybe noticing the sounds of life happening all around you, as it does. And then guiding your attention all the way back then to this new moment. And you can do little exercises like that. Simply, I've got some on my website, but simply just by bringing your attention into the here and now. You don't need anything else but just the present moment. It's here in every moment of your life. It's just waiting for you. And so often we can walk past the most incredible things, most beautiful things. We can have the most beautiful experiences and not even realize we're having them because we are lost in the negative daydreams of our mind. So it's about just catching that wherever the mind is, just bringing it back and not berating yourself or not berating the mind. It's just its job, just as the heart's job is to beat and the lungs' job to breathe. It's your mind's job to come up with those thoughts. So that's its job. Thank it. Thanks very much for that thought. But then can you catch it and can you bring your attention right back to the here and now, to this new moment where you have everything you need? And this practice, if you can just simply do it for a few minutes every day, I promise you that there will be resources in that place that you didn't know existed. And there is a richness in that you will be able to access in many different aspects of your life. And so when it comes to the mind, the most important concept is choice. To know that you are not your mind and that you have a choice wherever your mind is taking you right now. Can you, as best you can you catch it? And can you bring it back to what is actually here, what is real? And that choice is one of the most powerful tools you will have in your life, the most powerful resource. Just like in the film, to have that choice to take the story somewhere else, to step out of those negative daydreams and actually return to what is actually here. And so I will leave this recording and just say to you that I hope that you can find in the next few days, weeks and months ahead for you some opportunities to just come back to the here and now, to the present moment that will always be waiting for you just beyond those thoughts.